Alright, gonna try and do a clutch and pressure plate in this video. I got this 6-foot clutch from Clutch Specialty in Canton, Georgia. We'll start inside the car. Just need to remove the shift knob, shift boot, and I believe this one little trim. I got a couple Phillips head screws. Then we'll pull this plate out. And this little gasket. Then we got 6 12mm bolts for the shifter. Alright, these front two bolts might be kind of hard to get to. I've got a ratcheting swivel head 12mm, regular ratcheting 12mm, and then just a regular box end wrench. Alright, I got that last bolt back there off. It was kind of hard. Had to use both the ratcheting wrenches to get it off. I did put some RTV on the shifter, so it's going to take a little bit of prying to pop this off. Alright, need to get the exhaust off. Might actually need to take off the downpipe too that's mounted to the back of the turbo because it's pretty much in the way of the cross member here for the transmission. Alright, got the exhaust out of the way. Did check the shaft play on the turbo. No shaft play there, so I guess that's still good. 6 10mm bolts holding this pan on.
We got 4 12mm bolts for this little cross brace.
Alright, now the exhaust is off. We need to remove the drive shaft. To do that, we need to loosen this adjustment for the emergency brake and remove one of these cables because the drive shaft will get caught right here. And then we also need to remove the 4 nuts on the 2 sway bar mounts so the drive shaft can come down this way. I had to get some vice grips to hold it, but I did get this little lock nut loose. So now I should be able to, actually I need to let the parking brake off. Alright, now that the parking brake is off, we can loosen this. Pop the sway bar mount off. Alright, now we can finally get to these 14mm drive shaft bolts. Need to put it in gear or something. Alright, I just put the transmission in gear to get the other 2 out. I took it out of gear, spun the drive shaft 180 and put it back in gear. So I'm on the last one here. There is a little flat spot on the back here where the bolt hits up against, so you don't really need to counter hold the bolt. All you need to do is get a box end 14mm on the nut side. And now we should be able to pop the drive shaft forward and then out of the yoke and then down and out. So that goes down. Tight squeeze past the sway bar and then just slide it out of the transmission. This was part of the original exhaust setup, which this was the front of the catalytic converter, I believe. And since that's all removed and we have new pipe, I don't use this bracket anymore. So I'm gonna go ahead and just remove it and then not reinstall it. This was actually an extra ground strap when I was having starting issues or running issues way long time ago. This is also a ground strap for the chassis, and we will also remove the speed sensor. Alright, next up is the starter, so I will remove the negative battery terminal. Alright, we'll remove the starting switch cable. Move this because the nut was already loose. Grab the nut and we'll put it back on there so we remember where it is. Maybe we'll remember to tighten it this time. All right, next we got the starter. One 13mm here with the ground strap. That's not the starter bolt, that's just a transmission bolt to this bracket. The starter bolt is actually back here, 13mm, 14mm. To get to the starter, it's this 14mm bolt. And also one above it. This one above it right here.
Starter can come out. Keep these bolts with the starter. While we're here, we'll remove this. I believe this is either the neutral switch or the reverse light switch. Also need to remove the two 14mm bolts for the slave cylinder.
Alright, so I got this transmission jack from my friend. I'm going to try and use it. It's just a 1/2-inch drive scissor lift. Alright, there should be 4 bolts on the top of the transmission. You can see them way down there. 1, 2, right up there. And there should be 2 on the other side. I actually don't have one of them in. I couldn't find the right bolt that would fit in there. I ended up getting some of these. I think these are, I don't know what the size is, but they're 70mm in length. I remember not having one long enough that would fit in there and grab threads. Might be stripped out, might not be. Maybe I just have the wrong bolts, I don't know. All right, got those 3 top transmission bolts out. I'm gonna try and take out the bottom bolts and remove the transmission. All right, so the 2 transmission mounting bolts on this side were for the starter. So those are already removed. All right, so on this side we just have these 2 bolts. Oh, nice and loose already. Nice and loose already. Alright, I think the last bolts holding the transmission on the car are these 4 bolts for the cross member. So I'm just going to remove the whole cross member, try and put this strap around the transmission, maybe tighten it, and then hopefully we'll see if it comes out.
Alright, there's no way I was going to get the big strap that came on this jack connected and to ratchet strap it. So I just got a little smaller one and just wrapped it around the transmission on this plate. So I'm just going to go ahead and take all the bolts out and see what happens. So now the transmission should be completely free. I might try and lower it just a little bit. And then maybe it will slide back. Well, the plate came out. I think we need to come down a little bit more. There we go. It would probably be good if I could measure this exact height, because it looks like this is exactly where the stress comes off the input shaft of the transmission. And it's sliding right out. Look at that. Oh man, that was super easy.
So I still have the shifter connected. I RTV'd that plate to the top of the transmission and I can't get it off.
So the shifter is still connected, but I'm hoping we can just lower it down. Yeah, it's right at the back of the opening for the shifter. So we should be able to just leave it. Alright, 23mm. Maybe that'll stop the some of the flow.
That should give us enough room right there. My only concern right now is I believe there is a difference between the thickness of the flywheel between the naturally aspirated and early turbo models. The 71C and was it T5 I believe are the same, but I think the later model 30As take a thicker flywheel or a thinner flywheel or something. So I think that determines how thick, damn dog, the clutch should be. So I think the plan's gonna be just to go ahead and remove this pressure plate and flywheel, and then measure the height of them and make sure it's the same. All right, should be 6 12mm bolts holding the pressure plate and clutch disc on. All right, you should probably loosen these all kind of evenly, but I did not. And pressure plate. There is one little locating dowel right there.
There it is, it's off. Clutch don't look too bad, I don't think. Pilot bushing, I think I'm just gonna leave it in there. I'm not gonna deal with it.
All right, here's the two clutches. On the left is the old one, on the right is the new one. This old one doesn't look too bad, but I did have a little bit of slipping in second gear one time, probably when the tune was, building up boost pretty quick. So I wanted to go ahead and get at least something that would be somewhat reliable and newer and a little bit more performance oriented. The pressure plates appear to be pretty close. The only real difference in size or height that I've noticed is on this center ring where the transmission input shaft goes through. This is a little more pronounced by maybe a couple millimeters. I don't think that's going to be an issue because in the flywheel there's a pretty big opening right there, so I think it just fits in the flywheel. There's the flywheel right there, so I think it just slides into that bigger opening, and I think there's enough room for it, but we'll find out here in a second. From what I've heard, there's I think a 10mm difference in the flywheel thickness, so that might correlate to a 10mm difference in height of the pressure plate. I'm not exactly sure, but I would say this does look like the correct clutch and pressure plate. All right, I was worried about that little lip on the other side of the clutch disc here, but it does fit flush with the flywheel, and that little protrusion or whatever on the other side right there doesn't interfere with anything. There's enough room in the middle of the clutch. So we're gonna slap this back together. Hopefully I can get it done tonight. All right, installs just the reverse of removal. So let's see. It's a little heavy. And which way did it go? Doesn't appear to be lining up with the other dowels. All right, so it actually does fit. There's actually one dowel pin that is slightly off from the other two, so I just had to rotate the pressure plate on the flywheel to index it properly, and then it went into all the dowels. So I went ahead and threaded these bolts, and I'm just gonna run them down a little bit in a crisscross pattern and then torque them down. All right, one little thing to keep in mind, I have had this problem in the past where I had the clutch alignment tool in, but the clutch disc still sags down a little bit. So before I snug up any of these bolts, I'm gonna try and wiggle this around and just get it as centered as possible.
So the alignment tool still slides in and out real nice and easy, so hopefully the transmission.
All right, got them all torqued to 28, oh shit, foot-pounds. It's supposed to be Newton meters. All right, it was supposed to be 22 to 28 Newton meters, but my torque wrench was actually in foot-pounds. So I actually torqued them to 38. I think it'll be okay. We're just gonna run it. All right, pressure plate is torqued. I did put a little bit of grease on the input shaft of the transmission.
So now all I gotta do is take out the alignment tool and see if I can line up the transmission. Sure does roll nice and easy. Oh my goodness, it just slid right in like that. I can't believe it. And there goes the light.
These are the 3 transmission bolts that I had holding the engine on the engine stand. I couldn't get the 4th one in. because I couldn't get the arms to articulate properly. I ended up losing that bolt, and none of these bolts would fit in this top driver's side transmission bolt hole. So I ended up buying this one. It's a little bit longer, so hopefully it doesn't bottom out or anything, but I'm going to try and put them all in. Alright, so we at least got one bolt in up top. Alright, this plate cover goes between the engine and the other plate and then the transmission. Don't think it's going to line up. Maybe we need to go down a little bit. Alright, I did pop the starter in. I had that one bolt up top that was threaded. I did have to put a jack under the oil pan just to get everything aligned properly. So then I just snugged it down a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and run the rest of the bolts in on the top and all around the sides, and I'm actually going to try and torque them this time. Alright, I actually put the cross member bolts in the transmission right here. That's a cross member bolt, and that's the actual transmission bolt. Doesn't sound great. Okay, that bolt might be stripped. This one's tight. The four on the top are tight. We just need to snug the starter bolts up. Before we go to the starter, I am going to see if I can get these cross member bolts threaded. This side is in, and you can see, might be able to see over here, this is the issue I was having. Looks like the transmission might be set back just a little bit, so the threads aren't lining up, so I'm gonna have to pry it in there. Alright, I was able to get a pry bar in there. You can see right there I was prying on it on the little dumbbell, and I did get those bolts started. Alright, all four bolts on the top are tight. The two bolts on the left side bottom bracket are tight for the transmission. All we need is to tighten the starter bolts, and then the transmission should be mounted to the engine. Alright, tighten all 8 transmission bolts and the 4 bolts for the cross member. So we'll see if we can lower this transmission jack, and hopefully it stays up there. Alright, up next is the slave cylinder.
Nice and tight. This is either the neutral safety switch or reverse lights, I don't know which. Neutral safety switch doesn't work, so maybe it's not even plugged in, I don't know. Alright, I missed tightening down the starter cable, but it is tight, and I did connect the signal wire. Now we're going to slap the drive shaft in, so I'll pull out this little socket that didn't help keep all my transmission fluid from draining out. I got some cardboard on the ground to soak it all up, so we're just going to take the drive shaft for a second. Alright, drive shaft's in the transmission. We're going to have to pull this sway bar down to get this up in here. And resting on the yoke or the... And tighten them with 14 millimeter. Alright, we got the 2 bolts for the drive shaft in. This is a good time to put the shifter back in so we can take it out of gear, spin the drive shaft, and put it back in gear with the other 2 bolts. Not going to put any RTV on the plate this time because I don't think it's going to leak any transmission fluid up here, and it was hard to get off last time.
Alright, we're still up on jack stands. Just want to do a quick little test of the clutch. We're in neutral right now. We are running. Clutch going in and out in neutral, no noise or anything, so that's good. Put it in first. Pretty smooth engagement. That's belt noise. But so far so good.
Random home stretch here. Just gotta put these nuts on the sway bar brackets. Extra Loctite on that one. for both for this cross brace. And we got this little cover here.
Alright, I think this gasket is supposed to go on this side of this screw-on connector. I think it somehow came off when I was pulling the engine and transmission before, but I can't get it back on. I can get it over this, but I can't get it through this little screw-on connector. I don't think that's what seals the transmission fluid in. I think it's this either little plastic piece or there should be a little rubber piece that I lost. I'm not sure. I tried to look at some other pictures online, couldn't really tell, but I just ended up cutting this little paper gasket out of some extra gasket I had, and I'm going to try and just use it like that.
The little tab on the cable with the transmission, there it goes. And then screw this on, and we'll connect this round strap. Alright, this will be the last thing. Put the aluminum pipe back on. And connect the wide band. I'm going to go over, do this speed.